talking to me a little earlier. Now we're going to bring you some business news on the programme. We're going to start, in fact, in the world of cryptocurrency. A fake social media post has sent Bitcoin prices rather into a frenzy, and Keris Garland from our business desk is here to tell us all about it. Keris.
And that's right. It comes after the X, or the Twitter account of the US Securities and Exchange Commission was hacked. The US market regulator was due to make an announcement this week on the possible approval of allowing exchange-traded funds in Bitcoin. So when this post was made to X saying the SEC grants approval for Bitcoin ETFs on all registered national securities exchanges, well, it was quickly picked up by business news outlets. But within minutes, the SEC chair posted a message refuting the announcement, saying that the account had been compromised. Well, X said it had completed an initial investigation, finding the breach was due to an unidentified individual obtaining control over a phone number that was associated with the account, and the account was actually did not have two-factor authentication enabled. Well, after the false announcement, the price of Bitcoin spiked briefly to $48,000 before falling again. It comes as investors anticipate an SEC announcement on the potential approval of spot Bitcoin exchange-traded funds. Well, ETFs are portfolios that allow investors to bet on multiple assets without having to buy any themselves. So a spot Bitcoin ETF would track the market price of the underlying crypto asset, giving investors exposure to the token without having to buy the currency. Approval would mark a key milestone for crypto in gaining acceptance to the mainstream financial markets. Well, let's check in with the day's trading action. It was a cautious opening for the European markets as investors await Thursday's US inflation data for December. The FTSE in London opening 0.2% lower, the Paris CAC 40 on the flat line, and the DAX in Frankfurt up about 0.1%. Japanese workers' real wages shrunk for a 20th straight month in November, bolstering investor bets that the Bank of Japan will maintain its ultra-loose monetary stance later this month. Japan's wage trends draw an unusual amount of attention from global financial markets as the central bank regards pay and inflation outlooks as the most important data in considering the dismantling of its negative interest rate policy. Inflation-adjusted real wages fell 3% in November from a year earlier, while nominal cash wages grew 0.2% from a year earlier. That's compared to 1.5% growth in October. And people in Cuba have been queuing at petrol pumps ahead of a 500% surge in the price of fuel. The government announced it would stop subsidizing petrol from February 1st as part of a series of measures seeking to cut its budget deficit. As Matthew Mary Carichet reports, it comes at an already tough time for Cubans.
Residents of Havana rushed to fill up their cars on Tuesday, bracing for the biggest single jump in fuel prices in decades. In February, the government will end subsidies, causing fuel to become 5 times as expensive. 1 liter will increase from 30 to 156 pesos, the equivalent of 1.25 to $6.50. To put the cost in perspective, a single tank of fuel will cost more than a month's salary for the average state employee. Gas and electricity will also rise by 25%. The announcements rocked Cuba, where many residents depend on vast state subsidies to survive.
Gasoline is a country's thermometer because everything depends on it. Transportation, everything.
Are they suggesting the people go on strike because they're driving them up against the wall? I'm a big supporter of Fidel Castro's policies, and I was 100% in agreement with the economy in the situation when he was in charge, but he is gone.
Cuba's government also announced that it will begin charging in US dollars, further complicating the lives of Cubans, as most rely on exchange rates set by the black market. The government said charging in dollars is necessary to raise funds to import fuel from abroad and stabilize the supply in the long term. In December, officials reported that Cuba's gross domestic product contracted between 1% and 2% in 2023. They said annual inflation was at 30%, although some analysts believe the figure is truly higher. Cuba is experiencing its worst economic crisis since the collapse of the Soviet bloc in the 1990s, due to the consequences of the pandemic, tightening of U.S. sanctions, and structural weakness.
And there's concern that this could actually increase inflation for a whole range of other products, Stuart. So we'll be keeping an eye on that story as it develops.
I'm sure you will.